Fine. Okay. Bridget, when the other people talk, can you hear them?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, I'm gonna move the microphone a little bit closer to them. So I don't like in between us. It should get everybody, but okay. So, oh yes. Multinomial logistic regression. I mean, I think out of all of the statistics I ever use, this is the one I use the very, very, very least. But I also sometimes feel like I should use it more because it's a really cool thing. I've only published one paper on it before. And it was like one of the fastest acceptances I've ever gotten. So in my mind, that's like, oh, I should do it more. I mean, obviously that's not why it got accepted, but you know, you never know. Okay, so multinomial logistic regression is like regular logistic regression, except you have a categorical DV that is 3 or more. Now, a lot of the information in the modules, I was going over it, and then I just downloaded like SPSS 29, the latest one, and they changed it, and it sounded like a dinosaur. It was just stomping on the thing upstairs. So I'm gonna have to go in and edit some of that. I'm trying to share screen while also talking, and it's just not working. Hold on. So a couple of the things that they changed that I mentioned in there is one, I emphasize that you cannot select which is the referent category for your outcome variable. SPSS has changed that, which is good. And you can do stepwise multinomial regression. I think that was in the old version too. So maybe there's only one thing that changed that I insisted on you cannot do. So I'll have to change that in this new version, but I don't know if it's on 28 and 27. Does everyone have 29? Do you guys have? Good job. Okay. Okay. So, what?
I was going to like 26.
Oh yeah, I think mine was like 25, and I was like, oh. So I'll also need to get around to doing the new screenshots, but hopefully this will help us do that. Okay, so like I said, it's like logistic regression, except 2 or more categories. So, but the good news is you don't have to like vector code them. It recognizes that there are 3 levels. It doesn't read them in as a continuous variable, like a categorical variable in the independent variable. If you load in a categorical variable, it reads it as a continuous variable. So it will still run your regression for you. It just interprets it wildly incorrectly. That's why you have to vector code or dummy code, as we call it. So that's really good news. So you really could use as many categories as you wanted to. I recommend like maybe not more than 4 or 5, because then it gets really, really complicated to interpret. Because the problem is that you have your reference group, and so your reference group maybe is, in this example, it's that I'm going to be using, it's controlled diabetes. So you can reference it, controlled diabetes to other category, controlled diabetes to other category, but you can't compare the other 2 groups, right? So if you start to get like 5 or more categories, unless you really are dedicated to that reference group and you're just really obsessed with understanding how it's all linked to that reference group, it works. But then you want to also know how the other groups are related to each other, which we think of like an ANOVA, but there's not a way to do an ANOVA, kind of, mean differences in this multinomial logistic regression. Now, that being said, there are ways to compare them in plus using model test. And that, I think, example is in the code that I have at the very end of these modules. Okay, so the example I'm going to use today is sorry. 'Cause, 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 diabetes. So I have coded them as 3 levels: uncontrolled, undiagnosed, and controlled. So all of these people have diabetes, but looking at their A1Cs, they're either controlled, so meaning their A1C is under 7.5. Is that right, Bridget?
I think it's closer to 3, but I haven't been bedside in a while.
Oh, okay. We'll just say that. It's whatever the cutoff is for diabetes. It's one is uncontrolled, so it would be above that. Undiagnosed means they're like, no, I don't have diabetes, but their A1C score came back above that score. And controlled, which is our 3 and our reference category, or reference category, as some people say, is they say, yes, I have diabetes, and their A1C is below the cutoff. Okay, so that's how I coded these. So to get to multinomial logistic regression, I have to move the bar up at the top first. That's not part of the official steps. It's just what I have to do. Go to regression, multinomial logistic regression. There is a way to do it also in the generalized linear model. So there's not. Oh, they changed it. Just kidding. Well, that's good. Ignore all that. Multinomial logistic regression, and you see I've already moved it to the dependent category, and this lovely little button here is the new one, the reference category, last category. But let's say you really wanted it first, then you could do the first category, you select that, and the first category is the reference category. But let's say if you wanted the middle category, you wanted number 2, well, then you can customize it and say what the value is. That is a new fancy thing that SPSS is doing, and very, very thrilling. I'm looking for my purse with all my cough drops in it. I can't see. I'll just drink some water. Oh. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna keep it last category. Please.
It is that we always have to call the value, not the weight, is that right? If we call everyone, like, so if we wanted to go in the middle, do we just always call 2, or do we, okay, versus the uncontrollable?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so you put the numbers in there and not the term. Yeah. In there. And this is really nice because you don't have to continuously recode things. But also the way SPSS works, let's say we wanted to do custom number 2, and then we went in there and we're like, oh man, I need to reverse code one thing, and then you decide you want to do some other stuff. Anyway, it holds this in here until you click reset, and then it'll revert back to the last category. So it doesn't, like, once you change it, it doesn't revert back until you reset it. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm gonna go to then in statistics, I think it automatically comes with all of these here. But nevertheless, you can click all of them if you want. I don't think we need cell probabilities because we get what we want with the classification table. So these are all that you really need to do: the estimates, likelihood, ratio test. We don't really need the correlations. Bridget, when the windows pop up, can you see it? Am I sharing it properly?
Yes.
Fantastic. And then you don't really need anything else. We're not going to save anything. We're not really going to get into bootstrapping. So the covariates, I put in C-reactive protein, which is a measure of inflammation. Physical health self-reported. and strain from a spouse or partner. Now, if I wanted to do this in a stepwise fashion, I could build these model terms in the model, right? So I could say, how this is, I don't want an interaction, I want main effects. I can just build them and include them one at a time. And it says forward entry mode. And so it does them one at a time for me automatically. But I am not going to do that today. We're just going to do a regular old, load it all in at once. And then I think that's everything. You hit OK and you let it run. So first thing we see is the model fit information, the Akaike score information criteria, AIC, Bayesian information criteria. I really just talk about the AIC, but you could also report the BIC as well. Oftentimes people report both and it's horrifically confusing, like in this example, when it gives you an opposite answer. So sticking with one, is what I would recommend, but I just wanted to tell you that because sometimes reviewers will come back and want the BIC as well, just so you know it exists and it's there. Log likelihood as well. So what do we interpret from this AIC, intercept only and final model? So are lower AICs good or bad? Do we remember from the modules?
Good, so final fit's better than.
Yeah. So final fit is better. So we're like, yay, the variables that we added improve the model. So we're like thrilled about that. Here's the pseudo R squares. You know what? I did not include the cutoff values, but I will do that because I don't remember them right off the top of my head. I will include those because there's a certain level that would be a small, medium, and large for these R squares of the other ones. So this likelihood rate, the AIC reduced model. So this suggests if you remove an item, what will happen? And so you also want to look at those. And so if you remove an item, it gets worse. Physical health. It seems like they all get worse, so that's good. And then we get to the parameter estimates. And this is where we have to remind ourselves it's compared to the controlled group, right? So that's how we have to interpret these parameters. So when we look at the first group, this is uncontrolled compared to controlled, we see that none of the values are statistically significant. And none of the independent variables, I'm sorry, are statistically significant. So what that means basically is, which is that inflammation, self-reported physical health, or strain from the spouse does not differentiate the likelihood of someone being having diabetes uncontrolled or controlled. Okay. There's other variables out there that must predict that, right? But it's not these. For undiagnosed compared to uncontrolled, compared to controlled, we see that there are in fact two variables that are statistically linked to an increase. No, sorry. Yeah. So for health, higher scores mean poorer health. Okay. There are two variables that are linked to of the likelihood of being undiagnosed compared to controlled. So first is physical health. So poor physical health. I'm gonna say this is wild. Poor physical health means you have, and I'm looking at the exponentiated beta, you're gonna interpret it like you would like a logistic regression. You have like a 50% reduction in the odds of having an undiagnosed diabetes, the worse your health is, which is wild. Wait, actually, that could make sense. So if we think about people, I know I'm super unhealthy, they maybe know that they have diabetes. And then for strain from a spouse, like a stressful romantic relationship, you have a 200% increase in the odds of having undiagnosed diabetes compared to controlled. So remember, when we're doing these comparative languages, we always have to tack on that compared to. Otherwise, it could be left to interpret the compared to the rest of the world, right? So we always want to add that compared to piece. Okay. So here we only have two significant predictors of diagnosis status or controlled status. And it's only for that one pairing. So the classification table, which is part of kind of like the preliminary, like model fit type, like how good did we do of this model? Which really you should put report before your results comes after. So it's a little counterintuitive, but it does come after, but you should report it before. So based on what you read in the module, talk me through what you are seeing here in this last table.
So, right, it's above 50% overall, so you seem to be doing better than chance.
Yeah, what is chance? If there's three values, what's chance?
33.
Yeah, no, it was kind of a trick question, isn't it? Oh. It's, yeah, oh, there we go, okay. So overall, you're gonna look at that 52.5%. Right here. And because that's over 33%, you're like, okay, we're doing better than chance. I mean, obviously not much better than chance, but we're doing better than chance. But what's going on with this control here? What, just the controlled group? How are we doing just individually with that group? That 4.2%.
Really bad.
Really bad. So the uncontrolled group, we estimate really, really well, the 81%. The undiagnosed, we do okay, but the controlled group, we're doing really, really poor estimating, trying to figure out who belongs to that group. So the overall is 52.5% here. But this is kind of an example of, it's important to look at every aspect of your data. This wouldn't, for me, I wouldn't throw this out with the bath. I wouldn't be like, oh, I can't report this. I can't write a paper on this, but I would put this in the limitation section. I would say, we do an excellent job, this model of predicting uncontrolled, a little better than chance for the undiagnosed. But for controlled people, we might need to find more variables that predict what classifies people who have controlled diabetes in future research, and you can put ideas in there of like why you think that is. Maybe it's income, they have access to insulin, they have access to healthy fruits and vegetables, and that really is one of the main predictors here. And so including that in the model, and really maybe that should be a controlled variable in here anyway. So talking about that in the limitation section in futures research, like what that means and what you think. Okay. Any questions about multinomial logistic regression? I can send you guys the paper that was written out of this. These aren't the same variables that I used, but so you guys can kind of see what the write-up was like, if that would be helpful. Yeah, okay. I'll send that out to the group. Cool. All right. So now we're going to move to kind of planning what we want the extension portion of this semester to look like. What are some things that your guys are hoping to learn more about in these sessions? We only have like 5 more left. So I'm curious what you're hoping to get out of them.
Yeah, for me to use MLM,
Okay.
specifically from classified models.
Cross-classified models, okay.
That ended up being like pretty much all my being best analysis. So that and possible power analysis for
Okay.
but
Say that again, what?
These are
This is for MLM, okay, you guys are asking like the questions that the field. Okay,
yeah, I've been trying with them Hobson.
okay,
Does okay, but there was just a paper that came out, that's gonna have to just look at it again.
okay, well, send it to us so we can go through that. Do you guys have a specific data set that you want to use, or should I find a data set that we could use to work out through some?
I will have one pretty soon. Maybe just find it.
Okay, I'll try to find, I might have some cartridges. Okay, so there are a couple of things that we can do, the ways we can do this. One, we could just kind of like read some articles and some text and discuss it and kind of go and talk about the coding. The other thing that we could do is like find a paper that you specifically like and try to replicate it with another data set and what that looks like and how to go about doing that. And so it's more like a workshop of trying to replicate. And then as we're trying to replicate it, we learn, you know, the specific deep dives into it. So it's like a really hyper focus on one thing or two, depending on how much time you have. What are you thinking? Like, do you want like, I'll just read a lot about it and maybe get some more syntax together, or do you want to like try to figure out that one?
Yeah, I was thinking bigger picture, but you can read it right. We used it a lot, so like at least like most of them are, so like I can like run them, but it's the bigger picture of how things fit together that.
Okay, okay, so, and I've never taught that before, so this will be a fun thing for me. I know that sounds fantastic, but I don't mean it, I mean it genuinely. Okay, so, maybe we can fit in both. We can, next week, we can do a bunch of, readings. I have very little experience with R. I usually just do R for like figures, or I recently did R for some power analysis stuff. Or some like, hold on, the word is going to change my brain in just a second. Modeling, you know, like modeling populations. So it's mostly MS that I use, or SPSS, would that be okay? Can you convert things to R?
Yeah, all of our stress classes, the first ones are in SAS, SPSS, we did SCM plus, so.
Okay.
We had to convert everything.
This is the first one where I've had somebody use that code.
Yeah.
Use your what?
We use SPSS
Oh.
as a converted analysis.
Yeah, you.
Really?
Yeah.
SPSS is, I like it, it's like I use it as like a glorified Excel. I really like to like put data in it and like look at means and distributions, but I don't hardly run any statistics in it, except for I know I usually run it. Okay, so cross-classified MLM models, and you have done it a lot. Do you have papers that you've done it with?
Nothing's published, my,
Okay.
like, my thesis is using it.
Okay.
And then we have a couple other data sets that we published done preliminary.
So how did you learn how to do it?
Sarah Langford, she's the director of the department, yeah, so she just kind of walks us through it,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
So really, yeah, it's a new like it's just helps, but yeah, I think for the most part, like, it makes sense, but it's like when you include the random sets for slopes and that stuff.
okay. Okay, so that's a good, I would like to set that. Do you guys do any like dyadic analyses? It's all individual.
Right, so,
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna go get something real quick that might be really helpful. Yeah, my office.
you know, we can talk about it.
No.
So,
Oh, no. Wow. Add us. Sure.
Two.
Just take it, us. Oh, yeah, that's where the engine cost.
Oh, yeah. Bring it
I
up.
thought we had one to explain the age, there's the index. So this is a review for this is one of the ones.
Both of these are.
Yeah. So, yeah. Right.
Yeah, everything's, there's.
Yes.
Which is, I think, I gotta realize the data, like, that's good today. So I think it's end up, yeah, end up being more.
Okay, so I also have a couple of books that maybe you could find helpful. Have you guys looked at any of these books yet? Multi-level analysis by Cox. This is a really good one. And I just got this one, so I don't really know. Mixture modeling, specifically with MBS. This might be. This is not even mixture modeling. It would be more like. This is. I might copy some chapters out of here, then we might go through some of these kind of basic, So I'm gonna copy a couple of these chapters and then send it to everybody. I think, would you guys be interested in like, maybe the next one, so we'll bring like basic intro to multinomial, make sure we're all on the same page, and like what it is and why, and that might give us a better foundation. Because it sounds like we entered multinomial way here, and so like to just foundation, and then we're like, oh, that's why I did that, and then maybe we could get more into specifics. I also attended this really excellent course in the past, might be a little bit too. Highly recommend Curran and Bauer courses if you ever are into $600,000. They have really great summer courses. And it comes with like a year of statistical consulting afterwards that they can do for you. So we'll maybe do this later if we want to. But we'll start with that. Anything else? Bridget, is there anything specific that you're thinking about maybe for your dissertation coming up, like statistical methods that you're interested in that we can cover in this extension section?
Not that I know of, but I also feel like I'm way early in even deciding.
Okay, fair enough. Yep, you're right. You're in your first year. Fair enough.
But I appreciate it.
Say it again.
But I appreciate it though.
Oh, yes, of course. Okay, so really into multi-level analysis. We're gonna really do MLM. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
I don't know if other people are interested in power analysis, but that's something
Oh, and-
like power, it's just like it exists, and then, yeah, so I use G power.
Can you do G-power with multi-level modeling?
Like ANOVA, something like simple graph.
Yeah.
It's all, yeah, simulations.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I usually do G-power on the top level and see what I can estimate on the top level. And that's usually how I can, in my mind, estimate it. I don't think there's a publication of that anywhere. But and I don't even know if that's
Yeah, I tried
But it's
to
still-
estimate based on just over where I'm at, and it's like just basically what the
Yeah, yeah.
that I should consider, like, can't do.
Yeah, you're not supposed to, no, or like power achieved, okay, yeah. Let's do these couple of things first, and then we can get into it. So are we thinking, read the chapters, and then you guys come in with questions and we answer them? Are we thinking, read the chapters? And then how would you guys prefer to learn this? What's your preferred learning method?
I mean, let's there chapters outside and then we can questions or if there's anything that's like important, that's.
I like key things.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I guess in 2 weeks is our next one, okay. Read the chapters and then, maybe also I'll try and, come with some data that we can, run some things with, like run it. Okay, all right.
You can ask if that's new, like, these things, I'm not sure where it's limitation.
Yeah, it can, I don't like it, so I actually do it in.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, plus it's more intuitive for me in terms of writing code. But SPS can do it, and then the MLM that we cover in this course, I have both codes for it. So you can do that. Oh no. I think that's all I have. The other thing too is I scheduled an hour and a half because I thought if we really got into something, we would need it. But maybe next time is going to be the first time we'll really see if we need an hour and a half. If we don't, we can schedule an hour and bump it back to 10. So. Okay, cool. And I'm gonna stop the recording. And I'm gonna spend the rest of the hour figuring out which chapters to copy for you guys. All right, Bridget. Do you have any questions? You good?
I think I'm okay for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you. Well, hear you, I guess. Bye. Okay.